Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch on Mac Sport and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook pages. The Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great NESSP shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out. Shows, info, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, a legendary boxing writer and former president of the National Boxing Writers
Association of America, Mac.
Jack, don't help me. I got it. Bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. We also have our special guest on, as we have on every Saturday, Dr. Paul Semendinger, founder of the Start Spreading the News blog. Very popular. Check it out when you get a chance. And also an award-winning author. How you doing today, guys?
Great, Mac. Great, Doc.
Ready for a great day.
Yes, we are. So, folks,
I'm ready to win some debates today.
Folks, on Saturday, we always have our Mac and Jack sports debate show where me and Jack Hirsch debate topics from the world of sports, past, present, maybe even to the future, as we give our opinions and make our case to you all at home on which side of the debate you agree with. First, though, we do, since Dr. Paul Semendinger is a Yankee expert, also a Major League Baseball expert, if you want to say the whole thing. We do have Yankees poll question every Saturday and Yankees trivia question. And the poll question is where we post the question in three different Yankees fan groups and ask them their opinion, and we find out what their answer is after I ask my esteemed panel here. So in this week's Yankees poll question, the producer sent in this question, and it was your favorite way as a fan to follow the Yankee games. Would you rather be live at the stadium, watch it on TV, or listen on the radio? So all three ways, of course, if you're a fan, you don't mind doing. But what would be your favorite way? And starting with you, Jack, what is your favorite way to follow the Yankees?
To follow the game, okay?
Yes.
To follow the game, it would be on TV because you're at the stadium, something happens, a player could stub his toe or whatever. The guys in the broadcast booth, they have this access to them. The PR guys are getting them the information very quick. I would think, watching it on TV, nothing beats being there in person and enjoying the game. But so many times something happens and you're not quite sure exactly what's going on if you're in the stands. But if you're watching on TV, it's their job to get you the info, and the team knows it's important to get the broadcasters the info to get out to the public immediately. So it would be on TV.
And you, Doc, what is your favorite way to watch or follow or listen to a Yankee game?
So I think the most special way to watch a Yankee game is obviously if you're watching the game live in the stadium. But, like anything else, familiarity breeds contempt, right? And so if you went to 162 games live, I think it becomes a drag. There was a period of time where I had some small season tickets packages for probably about 10 years or so. And if you're going to 10 or 15 or 20 games a year, after a while, it's like, oh, got to go to the game. And again, coming from New Jersey, you got to go over the bridge, you got to park. So sometimes going too many times almost makes it lose some of the specialness of it. So how do I mostly follow? Obviously on TV, but the thing that I've always loved doing is having the Yankees on the radio when you're doing other things, especially with John Sterling, who I'm actually a big fan of John Sterling and the way he calls a game. I know he's got a lot of shtick, and I know he does a lot of silly stuff, but just love his voice. I've been listening to him since 1989 when he started, and that's always a part of what summer is all about, and following the Yankees is having that time. Maybe you're doing some yard work or you're trying to do something around the house, and in the background you got John Sterling talking baseball. So I guess all three, but if I had to pick one, the way I mostly follow obviously is on TV.
Yeah, I my favorite way, and I agree with you, Doc. I've been, when I was a kid, when I couldn't watch TV, I would have the radio on and Phil Rizzuto would be on. And of course, John Sterling is great at what he does. Susan Waldman, but John Sterling definitely. And whether you're doing yard work, like you said, or at work, if you work nights and stuff like that. And I just like the way they kind of paint the picture, get excited, and you can imagine, even if you're out some other place and some other game is on the TV, you always got that radio where you could tune them in. And I've been to the live games. I've watched Yankees on TV. Sometimes it gets boring to me because, there's a lot of nothing going on sometimes. At the game, it's exciting. But as you said, I mean, if you got to stay there for 12 innings or something like that, and you got to catch the train or however you get there, it can become almost kind of crazy. So my favorite way is definitely on the radio. The
radio also allows you to do other things, right?
Yeah.
I have a hard time parking myself on a couch for 3 or 4 hours just to watch a ball game.
Right. So I mean, and like you said, yard work, whatever you're doing, if you're outside and you got a pool party going on, you always can turn on the game and on the radio and listen to it. But the fans and those groups, the number one by a large amount was, of course, live at the stadium. TV was second, and the radio was third.
I bet the fans who voted live at the stadium would go to a grand total of 3 games a year who voted. No, I don't think they fully comprehended the question as far as following the game. I'm going to give you an example. Take some of these playoff games. The Yankees could be 5 runs down in the 6th inning. Now, Doc will be at the edge of his seat. Not that happy. Into the game. I'll be into the game, Mac. You'll be into the game, hoping the Yankees come back. The fans will be giddy, laughing, joking around. You'll see them in the stands having a beer, a hot dog. It'll be a night, it'll be an afternoon, a night out to them, even though there's a lot riding. The whole season could be on the line. And I'm really going to be focused, who do they have coming up? Who they have in the bullpen. I don't think most fans are quite into that once they're at the stadium. When they're watching on TV or listening to on the radio, I think they're more into the game than they'd be, live.
It's a great point, Jack. I mean, I've seen when I've been to games, you get to the 7th inning and the Yankees are down, and I've seen fans actually get up and leave. And I also see a lot of fans that have their, with modern day today, they're watching the TV on their little cell phone while the game's going. And to me, when I go to the game, because I don't go all the time, I'm not a season ticket holder, but when I go to the game, I'm watching everything. I mean, my head is up and I'm watching the plays and what the players are doing. So I guess if you were like a regular season ticket holder, like Doc says, and you say to a point that, you'll see people on their cell phones, you see things like this, and maybe it becomes not as special to them as it would be to like us going to maybe 3 games or 2 games that year.
Well, you know what it is? I'll be honest about it. When the games are on, I departmentalize. I'm doing other things unless it's a big game. If the Yankees are playing a playoff game, I'll put everything aside. I'm going to watch that game in full. I'm doing nothing else. I'm doing other things. I have other things to do in my life. It's hard 162 games a year to just sit and watch a full game, to put in that investment of time. I mean, if someone has the time to do it, that's great, okay? but I think we departmentalize unless it's a playoff game or it's a game to decide who's going in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. So after following the Yankee poll, we always have our Yankees trivia question, and I try to stump these guys, and it's very hard because they're both very knowledgeable about the Yankees and their history. So here's a question I found, guys, that I didn't know, and I'm pretty good with the Yankees history too. So I'm going to pose this question to you guys. Let's see. Which Yankee pitcher has a Major League Baseball record for wins in a season, guys?
I would think, off the top of my head, wait a second. Whitey Ford, I was thinking with 25 wins. Then I'm thinking Ron Guidry. Didn't Guidry win 25 and Whitey won 25? And I'm thinking, did anyone ever win more than 25 in the old days? Oh, man. Those two pop into my head. And no one, someone must have won 27 one year that I'm not, it's just too obvious, Ford and Guidry, but I'm going to stick with Ford and Guidry with the 25.
You might want to go a lot more wins up, Jack.
How about 41?
Yeah, you are exactly right.
Come on.
Jack Chesbro.
That's ridiculous. That shouldn't count. That should not disqualify that number. That's ridiculous.
No, Jack.
Ridiculous.
Jack.
Ridiculous.
Brother's ridiculous.
Tell me someone hit 112 homers in the season in 1884 and call that the major league record. Come on.
No one ever hit 112 home runs.
21 wins in the season.
41 wins.
You mean
Don't hate, Jack. Appreciate it.
I'm not embarrassed to miss that one, okay? I'm proud to miss that question. Proud.
Wow, Jack. 41 wins, Jack. Whether you like it or not, it's a stat. And
let me. It had to be what, 1894, something like that. Come on.
It was 1903 or 1904, right?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Hey,
I think it was 1904.
Was it Cy Young?
No, it was Jack Chesbro.
Of course, Cy Young didn't pitch. Like Cy Young's 511 wins. I don't look at that as the.
Oh, my God, Jack. Don't be sour grapes, Jack.
41. I mean, come on. Are we really kind? You should talk modern.
No, Jack, there's no qualifications because you want
that record can never be broken. No one can ever break the Yankee record for wins in a season unless they have a 300-game season. I mean,
Jack, sour grapes, Jack. We count the records from the 1900s when we talk, and when they talk, it's in the Hall of Fame. It counts, whether you like it or not, Jack. It counts. It's a stat. That's the trivia question, and you didn't do it. That's all.
But records you should be able to break a record, at least have a chance.
Nah,
okay, like DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak is valid. At least there's a chance it could be broken.
Yeah.
Someone could top Ted Williams's 406. They've got a legitimate chance. Even Bonds' tainted 73 homers a season. That's breakable. It's going to be very difficult, but it's breakable. But a guy 41 wins in the season?
That's right, Jack.
What?
It's the record, Jack. It's what it is.
Yeah,
but hey, listen.
Did we talk about asterisks? There should be one next to that. Do we agree on that?
As I said, there should be asterisks in every player if you're going to go like that. So anyway, the answer to it as the doc got right. Jack Chesbro.
Very good.
41 wins. So we're going to start a debate.
Do we know who's second on there? I'm just curious. So we down to Guidry and Ford?
Does it even matter, Jack? 41 wins. Does it even matter? So, Jack, let's get to our debates. And the first debate is, I'm going to try and word it correctly. Who is the player for the Yankees that represents the organization better, most popular? I mean, we take everything into consideration. So, Jack, is it Derek Jeter, or Yogi
Well,
Berra?
who's a greater Yankee? And it takes a number of factors into consideration, like you were saying, Mac.
Right.
Who is a greater player? Who is a greater representative of the Yankees? But most important, who do the fans identify as being a Yankee more and more? Now, if we were going to historically quickly go down the list, Babe would be number one, Babe Ruth, even though he didn't spend his whole career with the Yankees. When you think of the Yankees, you think of the Babe. Then second and third would be a virtual dead heat between the Iron Horse Lou Gehrig and the Yankee Clipper Joe DiMaggio. And right behind them would be Mickey Mantle. Now it gets to be a little tough, but I think 5 and 6 come down to two of the most loved Yankees of all time, Yogi Berra and Derek Jeter. Who do we place ahead of who? You could argue it's close. I'm going to go with Derek Jeter. As far as who is a better player, maybe Yogi holds a little edge, but how do you make a comparison to catch and a shortstop? Yogi rates on the short list, I guess, of the greatest catchers of all time. I'm not that sure that Jeter quite rates amongst the top 5 as the greatest shortstops of all time. That's another debate. I mean, most people probably put him a little behind Cal Ripken, who wasn't a Yankee. But Jeter has the 6th most hits in Major League Baseball history, so he's not exactly chopped liver here. But Derek Jeter's something that Yogi Berra never was. The face of baseball. The face of baseball for a lot of years. Not only the face of the Yankees, but the face of baseball. When Yogi played for the Yankees, as loved as Yogi Berra was, he was always a little behind Mickey Mantle, maybe a little behind Whitey Ford as well. What we like about Yogi, outside of him being a great player, he was a funny guy. All the Yogiisms, all the lines. I mean, my favorite line was when he was introduced to Ernest Hemingway, and they said to him, Yogi, we want you to meet the writer Ernest Hemingway. So he says to him, what paper do you write for, Ernie? I mean, how could you not love, something like that? And, everyone wanted to be like Jeter. I mean, as a young man, I would have loved to have been Derek Jeter. Wow, have that type of life. I mean, not everyone quite wanted to be Yogi. They wanted to be Mickey, more like during that time. Jeter also had a little bit of a longer career than Yogi, too, as a player. As players, it was close. Let's be honest. It was close who was better than who, because catchers are so much hard. It's so much harder to find a great catcher than it is to find a great shortstop. Maybe Yogi could have a little edge as a player. Perhaps he could make that argument. But I go with Derek Jeter. He was not only the face of the Yankees, but the face of baseball for a long time, something Yogi never was, as much as we all loved him.
Well, Jack, for this debate, as Yogi says, it ain't over until it's over. What makes Yogi Berra more popular, more a face of the Yankees, and popularity as far as baseball goes? It's not his 13 championship wins he had. It's not his 14 plus All-Star appearances that he had. It's not his 3-time MVP awards that he got. It's not even his 285 lifetime batting average, his clutch hits over those years, and the 1,400 RBIs. Not even the perfect game that he caught for Whitey Ford that you see the clips of today, because Derek Jeter has clips too of the great plays he made. Like Yogi says, topics like this, it's like deja vu all over again when it's between me and you, isn't it? I mean, we do this all the time. Of course, Derek Jeter was one of the most popular Yankees in history, but popularity and being a face of an organization or of baseball, as you say, isn't just his play or that he's in the papers all the time. I mean, you can count 70 years later, Jack, sports broadcasters are still using what you call the Yogiisms, right? So Yogi's Yogiisms were brief, humorous, and even wise. This makes him maybe the most popular Yankee. I mean, Babe Ruth, huge. Lou Gehrig. We all know Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle. But those sayings that he made, the broadcasters still use today. I mean, you have to come to a fork in the road in this debate. And as Yogi says, when you come to a fork in the road, just take it. You know what I mean? And if you're going out to your favorite restaurant that you used to go out to, well, nobody goes there anymore because it's so crowded. I mean, these things are repeated 70 years later, Jack. What did Derek Jeter ever say? We don't know. He was very quiet. He was very much to himself. He had private parties where you couldn't even bring in cell phones. How many speeches did he give to the media? How many times do we recall what Derek Jeter even said when he was that popular Yankee on those 90 teams, right? Yeah, he never really said anything. I mean, when we get wrapped up in stats, you muddle through them and you could say, well, this era was tougher than that era. This stat was tougher than that stat. This position was more difficult than the other position. And you can go through that and muddle through it all day. But when it comes to the Yankees, and you hear an announcer say, it ain't over till it's over, as Yogi says, how can you not say that maybe he's the most popular, the most revered Yankee of all time?
Well, let me just say one thing before Doc goes. Yogi was basically at the tail end of his career when I was a kid. But as kids, we used to talk Mantle, Ford, Berra, Mantle, Ford, Berra, meaning Mantle in the pecking order, okay? You take a young kid when Jeter was playing, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, you take them to a game, and they're not baseball fans yet. It could be a young boy, young girl. They'll all know who Derek Jeter is. That's the one name they knew. It wasn't Bernie Williams, Jorge Posada, Paul O'Neill. Jeter, 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 Jeter. I mean, that the name stood out far above the rest. It's an iconic Yankee name. But let's hear what Doc has to say, on this.
All right. So when I prepared for this, I was trying to determine who was the better player. And you were actually touching upon a lot of the things that I was touching upon, but I think that's almost a draw. And I like your point, Jack, about after you take the four great Yankees, DiMaggio, Mantle, Gehrig, and Ruth, who are the next two. I think the argument could be made Berra and Jeter would probably be the next two. The only other guys I could throw in there would be Ford or Mariano Rivera.
Yeah.
I think today we discount how great Yogi Berra was as a player. Now, my dad, who's in his 80s, was a kid watching baseball when Yogi was playing. And when you hear the people who watched Yogi play through the 50s, he's regarded differently. In the 1950s, Mickey Mantle, up until like his Triple Crown season in 1956, was often seen as the guy who hadn't fulfilled his promise. He was supposed to replace Joe DiMaggio and be great, and he was somewhat of a letdown, at least in some people's eyes, for a number of years. And Mantle becomes more prominent, I think, after that Triple Crown year. And then that 61 season when he becomes the beloved Yankee because Roger Maris was who wasn't a lifetime Yankee, was going to break Babe Ruth's record and all that. But Berra, on those great Yankee teams that had guys like DiMaggio and Rizzuto, who won an MVP, and Mantle and Ford, won 3 MVPs. Jeter, I think there were a couple of years when he was in the running, and he probably should have won at least one, but he won none. Berra was an all-star 18 times. Jeter was an all-star 14 times. But I think Yogi is someone who transcends the sport. You could, and of course we've talked a lot about this. We have recency bias, right? With Derek Jeter, people know him now because he played recently. In 50 years, are people going to know Derek Jeter as well as they still know Yogi Berra? I don't think so. I think Yogi will transcend that, as Mac was saying, because of the fact that he was a larger-than-life personality. And he has all those quotes. He was also a Yankee manager. He transcends the game in ways that Derek Jeter didn't. And the other thing that's going to help Yogi is Yogi. I know he had the feud with George Steinbrenner and he was away for a while, but absent of that period, he was always involved with the Yankees. He was at spring training. He was at Old Timers Day. He was the Yankees. Derek Jeter made this critical decision, and who can blame him? But he is not the Yankees anymore. And I think as every year goes on, he's going to be more and more distant because people aren't going to have seen them. Kids today haven't seen Derek Jeter play. Hasn't played in 6, 7 years or so, because he's now going to be seen as the face of the Miami Marlins. That's where he is. That's where he's investing his time, efforts, and energy. He doesn't come back to Old Timers Day. Maybe he can't. I'm not sure how that works. If you're the general manager, or owner of a team, if you're allowed to go to other teams' Old Timers Day,
He wouldn't want to.
Well, that's the point. He has disassociated with the Yankees, and Yogi had the feud, but he came back. That was a big deal. And so I think Yogi Berra, historically and even today, is the more iconic of the two great Yankees.
Doc, I'm going to correct you on something because you left the impression that Yogi was with the Yankees all the way through. He went to the Mets as a coach and as a manager. He even coached for the Houston Astros.
That was during the feud, yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, if you can look this up, I think, and this kind of dirties it up a little bit even. You love when a guy plays his whole career for a team. I think Yogi had like 4 at-bats, for the Mets or Houston, and that's the only time he didn't play for the Yankees. Yeah, I mean, was that necessary? Right? But listen, your points are well taken. The point you make, I like, though, and your strongest point, which is a very good one, is years from now, Yogi's name could outlast Jeter's, perhaps, okay? Going forward in that sense. And yeah, I mean, Yogi's the most loved player of all time. But was he a greater Yankee at his peak with the Yankees? Was Jeter a greater Yankee at his peak? I could throw that argument. And I think at Jeter's absolute heyday as a Yankee, he was a greater Yankee than Yogi at Yogi's best in his heyday, because Yogi was always looking up to Mickey, okay? And everyone was behind Jeter. That's kind of my argument. But you make great points. And I think over time, Yogi is going to be considered the greater Yankee because he's a part of our culture, with all the funny lines and how loved he was.
Correct. So let me just jump in there. 2 things. I think there were times when Mantle was actually looking up to Yogi. That's why Yogi won those 3 MVPs. And that's why when you talk to the people of the older generation, they actually revere Berra as the greater player. And speaking of the Mets, you make a good point. And that I think that "it's not over till it's over" quote was actually about the 73 Mets. I think he said that as the Met manager. So he didn't even say that as a Yankee.
Well, that was Tug McGraw. He had a war cry say, you gotta believe. Yeah.
But I think Yogi also said it ain't over till it's over. I think that was in that same period. I could be wrong, but off the top of my head.
So there you go, folks. It's of course it's up to them at home, and you got to count that the media, when Jeter was, at his best and making those plays, a lot different than the media was back then. And for Yogi saying still to go on 70 years later, to me is incredible. So
I think Jeter related more to the younger people, the younger fans identified a little more.
Hey, listen, no doubt.
And the older fans with Yogi.
There's no doubt that Jeter was tremendously popular, Jack. There's no doubt about that at all. So, so it goes in our debate. So the next up now, Jack has been biting at the bit to debate this with me, and I've been avoiding it because I am a Yankee fan and I love Mickey Mantle, but he wants to go who was better in their prime, Mantle or Maris. And you can say tomato, I'll say tomato. You say potato, I say potato. I mean, it's that close. So 2 great players in their prime. The only difference is they played in different leagues facing different pitchers. Now, you're going to throw a lot of stats at me, Jack. I know you are with Mantle and what he was in his prime. So I'm going to have to give you mine. Starting 1954 on a team that won the World Series, he won the NL MVP. Batting average of .345 in 1955, home run leader in the National League, 1956. Stole 40 bases, leading the the National League, first of his 4 years. In 1957, won his first Gold Glove, first of 12, still a record. In 1958, his batting average was .347. 1960, led the NL in home runs. 1960, led the National League in hits. In 1961, led the league in runs scored and led the league in home runs again. Second MVP in 64, led the league in home runs in 64 and 65. And Jack, don't give me Mantle's prime. He got hurt because this is Willie Mays' prime. Mantle only got one Gold Glove, one fair or fair. Like I said, I love Mickey Mantle. It's very close, but I would have to take Mays if I was going to be honest with you in his prime.
Well, if I had to pick one to have a whole career, I'd pick Willie Mays.
I'm just saying in the
prime. Yeah, exactly. But talking about the prime, I'm going to go with Mickey Mantle just in his prime, and let's talk only 2-3 seasons or something that.
No, wait a minute. Willie Mays' prime lasted longer than Mickey Mantle's. It's a fact. So you can't take Mickey Mantle and take those years.
I'm talking at peak value, at their very best.
Right. Well,
both guys at their very best.
Before you go, Willie Mays had a longer prime than Mickey Mantle. It's not his fault.
He had a longer prime, but the absolute peak of his prime wasn't as great as the peak of Mantle's prime, the absolute peak. An absolute peak of someone's prime doesn't last 6-7 years. They can be in their prime for 15 years, but there's certain peak years that they have when they're at their very best. If I'm talking Ted Williams' peak, I'm talking about the year he hit 406. Joe DiMaggio, I could point out a couple of seasons, okay? The same with Lou Gehrig. I mean, with all these iconic guys, yet they hit a certain peak. And the Mickey Mantle of 1956 and 1957, I'll put him against the best of Willie Mays, and I'll give him a little edge for those 2 seasons. And let me throw in 1961 as well. And if I move that season up and bunch that, he's ahead. I'm going to just mention something quick about the 1961 season. Had Mantle not had his spot in the batting order change with Roger Maris, or when Roger Maris was slumping early in the year, there's an excellent chance it would have been Mickey Mantle breaking Babe Ruth's record and not Roger Maris. Roger Maris absolutely wouldn't have broken it if he didn't have the protection of Mickey Mantle there. Roger Maris wasn't even given one intentional walk that whole season. Mickey was walked continuously in his career. But let's talk about 1956. He won the Triple Crown, 52 homers, 130 RBIs, and 353 batting average. You're going to tell me Willie Mays was better than Mickey Mantle, that version of Mickey Mantle? You're going to tell me the next year when Mantle hit 365, Mays was better? I don't think so. I don't think the best version of Willie Mays was better than Mickey Mantle then. Mickey Mantle, at his absolute peak, had more power than Willie Mays, okay? Tape measure homers. Mickey Mantle was the father of the tape measure home runs. And he ran faster than Willie Mays, actually. Before he got hurt, the injuries took a toll. Even an older version, he was a better bunter. Even an old, washed-up Mickey Mantle invented the drag bunt, getting down to first base. Roy White asked Mickey Mantle to teach him how to bunt, the drag bunt to work with him. That's how good a bunter Mickey Mantle was. He had a high on-base percentage. And by the way, in 1962, head-to-head, Mantle's Yankees beat Mays' Giants. But that's a minor little thing. Let's look at the postseason. That's when someone really supposedly is at their peak. Mays had I'm not in the Mets to a lot, 4 postseasons. 51, he was a rookie. In 73 with the Mets his last year. But in between that, he was at his peak in 54 when Mays' Giants beat the Cleveland Indians. And then in 1962, he was at his peak when Mays' Giants lost to the Yankees in 7 games. Now, 89 at-bats Mays had in the postseason. That's a little bit of a sample to give us. And he only hit 247. 1 homer, 10 RBIs, and 89 at-bats for Willie Mays. Now, conversely, Mickey Mantle, he had 230 official at-bats, 18 homers, 40 RBIs. Even though he hit only 257, he walked 43 times. If you want to prorate those numbers into a full season, Mantle did quite well against the elite out of the elite in the World Series, and Willie didn't quite do as well. Now in this new age of baseball, it's on base percentage. Mantle's peak numbers, his on base percentage were clearly superior to Willie's. Willie was great. Over their career, if both of them are 21 years old and I could have them for 15 years, give me Willie Mays anytime. But if I have two seasons I can only have them for, and they're at their very best, the peak of their powers, I'll take the Mick. And just one last thing with the glove. Willie Mays, one of the greatest center fielders of all time. You point out 1 Golden Glove for Mickey Mantle. A lot of Willie Mays' things were dramatic. The over-the-shoulder catch with Vic Wertz in the World Series. They never saw anything like that. Mantle's catch to save Lawson's perfect game was a better catch than that, but it was a basic catch. Mantle like a locomotive running at top speed, snaring the ball. To me, that was a greater catch. The other one was more hyped. Give me Willie for his whole career. Give me Mickey for a short window at his peak.
Well, again, before Doc goes, Mickey Mantle to me is one of the greatest players of all time. I mean, I'm a Yankee fan. But again, you're saying the peak of their prime. Now we brought it down to a very small thing. And you got to remember, Willie Mays was in the Negro Leagues before he got into the Major League Baseball leagues. I don't know how good he was back then.
Nothing, Mac, in the sense he wasn't in his prime before he became a rookie with the Giants.
Well, you don't. Can you give me the numbers for him in the Negro Leagues, Jack?
Listen, when he got to the Giants, he was in the Negro Leagues before he came to the Giants in 1951. Right. He struggled so badly with the Giants. Leo DeRocha had to console him, so he wasn't in his prime. Those are numbers for his career, if you want to talk about.
I'm just saying, Jack. What I'm debating you right now is prime. You're saying in 2 years. I'm saying that in his prime, Willie Mays scored more runs than in a few years than Mantle did. He stole more bases than Mantle did in a few years. He was over. I mean, he got the Golden Gloves. I didn't give it to him. He got the Golden Gloves where Mickey Mantle didn't. And we're talking a 5-tool player. Now, again, it's not Willie Mays' fault that Mickey Mantle got hurt. That's what happened. And I'm not saying
you're going away from the prime.
I'm not saying. Well, no, I'm not, Jack, because his prime was longer than Mantle's. What I'm saying that if Mickey Mantle didn't get hurt, well, maybe Mickey Mantle would have been better in his prime. But he got hurt. It's not Willie Mays' fault. So if you're going to talk about runs scored, you're going to talk about stealing bases, you're going to talk about power, and you're going to talk about batting average and defense. I think Mays still has a little
on-base percentage. Walks are the most underrated stat. And Mantle, he walked a lot more than Mays. He got on base more than Mays. But you and I, Mac, were brainwashed when we were coming up young. Maybe Doc was too. Everyone would talk batting average. Like it's as if walks didn't exist. It drove me crazy when I played in Little League, for example. I would get up, 3 times. I would ground out and get 2 walks, and its word was, he didn't get a hit. Like I failed. You know what I mean? Come on, 2 walks. I got on base twice. So Okay, let's hear what Doc has to say.
Yes, yes.
All right. So this one was so hard. I looked at this from every possible angle I could. And technically, or not even technically, you're both right. And it really comes down to what you define as the peak and how long that peak is. Mantle had 10 300 seasons. Mays had 10 300 seasons. Mantle hit 30 home runs 9 times or more. Mays did it 11 times. Mantle won 3 MVPs. Mays only won 2. Mantle had a triple crown. Mays never did that. Mays had a lot of gold gloves. Mantle never did that. If winning matters, Mantle has 7 World Series rings. Mays, I believe, has only 1. I said, let me break it down a different way. Let me see who's like, what was Mantle's best home run season? 54. What was Mays's? 52. How about RBIs? Mantle, 130. Mays, 141. Batting average, Mantle, 365. Mays, 347. So then I said, I mean, it's one way or the other. It's back and forth. So I said, how about I take their 3 best years? And in their 3 best years, and this is something I never even really thought about, because everybody always talks about Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, like they're great at the exact same time. Mantle's best years were actually those years, 1956 and 55 and 57. That's really when he was at his peak. Mays' greatest statistical years actually come later. They come in the 1960s. It's really like 1962 to 1965. So Mantle's best 4-year period was 55 to 58. Mays is 62 to 65. And there's a statistic called WAR, which we don't have to get into, but they try to break down and covers all the different errors. You calculate the players against their contemporaries. For Mantle's 4 best years, his WAR was 43.7. For Mays' 4 consecutive years, his WAR was 43.3. That's a statistical dead heat. Mantle's 2 best WAR years were 56 and 57. It was 11.3 and 11.2. Mays's were 64 and 65. It's 11.0 and 11.2. I mean, again, it's like a statistical dead heat. If you're going to value the run scoring, the defense, the gold gloves, the stealing, Mays wins. If you're going to value the winning and, the greater power, the switch hitting, and things like that, Mantle wins.
So there you go, Jack.
Yeah, listen, Mays was better over his career. Okay,
No doubt.
there's without question, about that. But sure, Window at their very best. I mean,
It's close, my friend. It's very close. And I hate this debate because I don't want to go up against Mickey Mantle.
well, I gotta tell you a story I maybe mentioned in the past show. When I was a kid, I used to call up the Bill Mays' talk show on the radio. He had Mel Allen on, from once, and I was a pest. All I would ask about the Mantle Mays debate, like now arguing for Mickey, like I was a kid, being a kid, being a pain in the butt. And I asked Mel Allen, and you could tell Mel Allen didn't want to even answer the question. How could he say Willie was better, even if he felt that way, because of his affiliation with the Yankees? So he said it best. He says, it's such a small difference. What does it matter? And at that time, Mantle hadn't started declining yet, and I was very young and he got me off that way. But Bill Mays was firm when they were at their peak that Willie Mays was the greater player. I will say that, and that was before Mantle declined. So let me ask this. Did the ballparks have a bearing? Candlestick Park, I forgot, with all the wind, did the wind keep the ball in the park or blow it out? I don't really remember that.
I don't have an answer.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to say in their peak years, regular season, we're not just talking, postseason, because the Yankees had a greater team than the Giants. There's no doubt about that during those years. So, of course, he's going to get more at bats, more home runs, all that stuff. But if you count different leagues, different pitchers, who had the better pitchers back then? Was it the National League or the American League? Whose stadiums were different, as you were saying, Jack? The National Leagues or the American Leagues? It's so hard to muddle through all that. I mean, you're talking in the 60s. I think the National League has some pretty good pitchers in Willie's prime. I think it has some really good pitchers. American League, I'm not sure of what the status is between the American League pitchers and the National League pitchers, because that has to be thrown into the equation too. So, I mean, to really break it down to its finest, I think would take forever. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? Until Mantle started declining, it was considered very close, and there was a hot debate. But of course, the last 4 years of Mantle's career, he was so, and Mays continued, the longevity, his greatness, and that put the argument, the discussion beyond the shadow. But that, it's funny. I was watching a while ago an old clip, and they were debating it on SNY, and Gary Carter, like Gary Carter, great catcher, decided he was going to take the opposite tack. He was arguing on behalf of Mickey Mantle being greater than Willie Mays. And I kind of got a kick out of that. He says, someone's got to take it up for the Mick, and I will. So obviously, Mantle was one of his idols. I hadn't known that.
Mickey Mantle is easily one of the greatest.
You know what? We could debate another time. Who was more charismatic? That would be a great debate. Those guys were oozing with charisma, both of them.
That's true. So anyway, let's get into this debate real quick. We got another 13 minutes. If we have to carry it over, we will. So we're going to pose the topic and question: who is the best team not to win the World Series? And man, there's so many of them to choose from. So Jack, you're up this time. Who do you got?
Listen, there have been a number of outstanding, great teams that haven't won the World Series, and we don't think of them or remember them as a great team because you have to finish the job. To me, I like the 1954 Cleveland Indians. They won 111 games that year. Keep this in mind. It was a 154-game schedule. So if we want to prorate their victories, there'd be 8 more games. Let's say give them 5-6 more wins. That means they would have won like 116, 117 games. Maybe they won 7 out of 8, maybe 118. I don't know. But that Cleveland Indian team, give you an idea how good they were, okay? The team they beat out to go to the World Series to win the pennant was the Yankees. Now, the Yankees had won the World Series the 5 years before. And in 1954, that Yankee team was better statistically than the one that won 5 World Series in a row. They won 103 games. They hadn't won that many games, the 5 years before. And I'm not sure even after, for a number of years, they hadn't won that many games. And the Cleveland Indians, I mean, they ran into the New York Giants in the World Series and got swept. Willie Mays' New York Giants with Leo DeRoche and so on. But that team, the pitchers they had, Bob Lemon, we think of him as the Yankee manager, great pitcher for the Cleveland Indians. Early win. They had Mike Garcia, who was 19-8. I mean, Lemon and Win with 20-game winners. Bob Feller was on that staff. Even though he was towards the end of his career, he had a 13-3 record. So much for fading. Great pitcher to have that type of record. The infield is Al Rosen. I mean, Al Rosen hit 24 homers, 102 RBIs, 300 batting average. Al Rosen, ironically, would come to the Yankees later as George Steinbrenner's right-hand man. Like I said, Win and Lemon each won 23 games that year. Bobby Avila, their second baseman, had a 341 batting average. But something happened to him. When they got to the World Series to play the Giants, they just stopped hitting. That's the nature of baseball. Baseball is crazy. A team can be sailing along. They could be so great, so dominant, and then they hit a little bump in the road and they better get it together. It nearly happened with the 1998 New York Yankees playing these Cleveland Indians. After winning the first game, they lost the next 2. If they didn't get it together very quickly, the 1998 Yankees would have had the same fate as the 1954 Cleveland Indians, and guess what? That may have been the team I would have been talking about. But the 1998 Yankees got it together just in time, won the World Series, as last year's Dodgers team. They were down 3-1 to the Braves. Imagine they lost. They would have been in the discussion. But the 54 Indians never got on track in the World Series. A truly great team. And one last thing. When Leo DeRocha was interviewed and they asked him, what was the greatest thrill of your career? Was it when you were the Giants of the Miracle of Cogan's Bluff, when they came back in 1951, the Giants to beat the Dodgers on Bobby Thompson's homer? He said, no, the greatest thrill of my career was managing the Giants to the victory over the Cleveland Indians, sweeping them in the World Series, because the Indians was such a great team.
It's great choice. Jack, I'm going to go with the 1975 Red Sox. At this time, we were still talking about the curse of the Bambino, right? That since the Red Sox had traded off or sold off Babe Ruth, this curse has lasted, I think, until 2000s, if I'm correct. Not the best record in the regular season, Jack, but as we said in the past, it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right? And this roster was young, Jack. This roster was very young and talented. And if not for the Yankees in the late 70s, they would have won a couple World Series. In my opinion, and for what I saw, they were probably the second best team in the league, period. And if it wasn't for the Yankees in the 70s, I think they would have won a couple World Series. So you had these players on this team. You had Jim Rice, young guy, power, had a lot in the pop in his bat. Fred Lynn, Jack. Fred Lynn, in that year, he had a game. He went 5 for 5 with 3 home runs. An incredible game. I think he was MVP or Rookie of the Year one time.
Both.
If I remember correctly. Of course, you had Carl Yastrzemski, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest Red Sox, one of the greatest baseball players in history. And you also had Carlton Fisk, arguably one of the greatest catchers in baseball history also. So they go in and they go against the mighty Oakland A's in the pennant. The Oakland A's were in the World Series a few years before, Jack, and they sweep them. And then they go up against arguably one of the greatest teams in baseball history, the Big Red Machine and the Cincinnati Reds. So good that they swept the Yankees the following year, if you remember. So they end up going and playing the Reds, and it's in Game 6. We remember that video of Carlton Fisk pushing the baseball to stay fair with his hands as he's going down the line. What a clip. Still show it today. And in the 7th game of that World Series, Jack, they jumped out to a 3-0 lead. They were up 3-0 in 6 innings and 3 innings away of winning the World Series. The Reds came back. Carl Yastrzemski had one more shot at it. You're one of your greatest Red Sox, and he lined out with 2 outs and nobody on base. They came that close to breaking the Bambino curse that year. And, even though they're the Yankees' rival, what a team they had. And, Louis Tiant, as we all know, the crazy pitcher who turned all the way back to second base before he threw the ball. He had crazy man Bill Lee on that pitching staff. A couple other ones that really filled in. I remember Bernie Carbo, coming off the bench, Doyle coming off the bench, providing a little power and a little bit of, base hitting off there. It was a fun team. It was a young team. And, to go up against the A's and sweep them like that and then come 3 innings away from beating the Reds with that young team, that's why I picked them as the greatest team.
You make it just very quickly before Doc goes. You make great points. What a great World Series that was against the Reds. If you're going to debate the greatest World Series of all time, at the very least, that one is in the discussion if you don't vote for it as the top one. You mentioned the power supplied by Bernie Carbo coming off the bench. Yeah, the Red Sox were cooked. They were down 6-3 in the 6th game. Carbo comes up as a pinch hitter, hits a 3-run homer, 6-6, and that set the stage for the extra innings. And the way the Red Sox let that get away, after dramatically winning Game 6, Sparky Anderson, the Red manager, he was very pessimistic. He admitted he thought they were going to lose Game 7, and he was even saying to his coaches, I don't think we're winning Game 7. And the Red Sox were leading 3-0 going to the 7th inning, and you mentioned Bill Lee. He threw one of his blooper pitches or whatever, and Tony Perez hit a 2-run homer to make it 3-2. Then the Reds get a run in the 8th, 3-3. Then they get a run in the 9th to go up 4-3, and they won. You kind of felt they snatched victory from the Red Sox. They were so close to breaking the curse and had their hearts broken.
Yeah. So what do you think, Doc? Who's your best team not to win the World Series?
Yeah, so another great question. I really liked this one. Yeah, I just want to talk about the Big Red Machine, which is interesting too. Is we remember them from being so dominant for so long, but they only won those 2 World Series. 75 and 76. Their peak, when we talk about peak, was short lived. So I was looking through the history of baseball, great teams that didn't win the World Series, and I think we have to. I'm going to go with Mac if we're going to say like a team that never won the World Series. Like the Red Sox weren't able to do it. That Red Sox era team with Yaz and Lynn and Rice and Dwight Evans and all that, Carlton Fisk, they weren't able ever to win a World Series. I mean, you could look at a team like the 1931 and the 54 Indians also never won a World Series. Like the Philadelphia A's in 1931 won 107 games against only 45 losses. They had like Mickey Cochran, who was so great that Mickey Mantle was named after him. Jimmy Fox, Al Simmons, Lefty Grove went 31-4 that year, and they didn't win the World Series. But they won the World Series the year before, so maybe that doesn't count. And you could look at the Orioles in 69, right? We've talked a lot about the miracle Mets, the amazing Mets of 69. The Orioles, I believe, won 109 games in 1969, but then they went off to win World Series in the years after. So maybe the only other team I could think of that gets any thought in this would be the 2001 Seattle Mariners, who won 116 games and didn't win the World Series. But when you go back and you look at like the A's, and you look at the All-Stars, you look at the Red Sox and how many of those guys went in the World Series, or the 54 Indians and that great pitching staff and how many of those guys went into the Hall of Fame. The 2001 Seattle Mariners, they really only had 2 legendary players who will probably end up in the Hall of Fame, Edgar, who's in, and Ichiro. And so I don't know, sometimes teams have great years and they win a lot of games, and I think that's really the 2001 Mariners. They won a lot of games, but I don't know if it was a great
on that team. I'm thinking,
and I was just looking it up, and neither was A-Rod. That was I think that was the year after A-Rod left. So
right, that was the year after he left. That I remember.
Yeah, their outfield was Al Martin in left, Mike Cameron in center, and Ichiro in right. And their infield, John Olerud, Brett Boone, Carlos Guillen, and David Bell. You're just not looking at like legendary names.
You may have copped out a little bit accidentally, because you're saying, well, if they won the World Series the following year, I can't pick them like the Orioles in 69. You could pick that Oriole team. It's for one given season.
Well, that's what I'm saying too with the A's.
Yeah.
But at least those teams were able to then – those players were able to win a World Series.
And you make a great point. Mac makes a great point. The Big Red Machine won only 2 World Series, which isn't bad. Don't get me wrong. But the Big Red Machine was in the 1970 World Series. They were just coming into their own. But in 1972, they lost to an Oakland Athletic team that won 3 in a row. And I personally think that Oakland Athletic team was a little better, even though they didn't have quite the impact players, Bench, Rose, Morgan, Perez, but they had great players too, with Reggie, Sal Bando, Joe Rudy, et cetera, et cetera. And there's one team that's intriguing. I bet none of us thought of, and it just popped into my head now. They have to look up their record. I think it was the 1952 Brooklyn Dodgers. The Yankees were their nemesis, and the Dodgers were so great. It's a shame they had only 1 World Series. I'm glad, because they lost to the Yankees, but they were just too good. They were just such a great team, and they always hit that bump against the Yankees. And I think maybe it was 52 that was their year. And that everyone thought they were going to win it, and then they run into the Yankees, and for whatever reason, they don't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, certain teams own certain teams for a while. As I said, the Boston Red Sox teams of those late 70s, they were awesome. They were always getting beat by a Bucky Dent home run grand slam or something crazy happened that prevented them from going in. And I remember going on the bus. I was playing football. And coming back from the bus, of course, we had the Yankees, Red Sox, the game on, and the Red Sox fans where I'm from is more than the Yankee fans, and they were all cheering, "Oh, we're going to win this! We're finally going to get and beat the Yankees." And then Bucky Dent came up, and I didn't hear it because they were so loud. All I heard was, "Oh, no friggin' way!" Yeah, that's all I heard. And I'm like, "What happened?" They're like, "Bucky Dent hit a grand slam." I'm like, "What can I tell you? What can I tell you? That's the Yankees." But I think they had probably the second best team in the league. I think they would have beat the Dodgers in both World Series. I think they were
one thing about baseball, it's insane. You could take the Los Angeles Dodgers, put them against the Brooklyn Cyclones for one game. And, Dodgers would probably win just about every time out, but it's conceivable. Let them play 25 times. Cyclones are going to win one of those games somehow. That would never happen in football or basketball with that disparity. But baseball, it's like everyone has a chance. You could hit 8 line drives right at someone. There's a little element of luck in baseball. You don't quite have in the other sports, I feel.
Very, very, very true, Jack. So let's get to our first official timeout, folks. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. And stay tuned as you want to hear some more me and Jack debate and Doc try to keep us from killing each other. So we'll be right back after this. Oh my God. I don't know why that's playing, but what the heck? We might as well play a couple things. There we go. We'll get back to where we're supposed to be. We'll be right back, folks.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. Much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 InfoLine. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
You talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
that we know of. Well, he wants to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I can shoot a partridge with a single cartridge.
I can get a sparrow with a bow and arrow.
I can live on bread and cheese.
Welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. It's our Saturday version of the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our debate show, folks. This is where me and the legendary boxing writer, Jack Hirsch, pit against each other as we try to make our point.
Mac, can I cut in with an emergency quick debate that should last only 30 seconds or so? The Yankees have to make the Yankees have to make a quick decision. Mike Tauchman, am I pronouncing? Help me out pronouncing his name, Doc. Mike Tauchman or Jay Bruce? Who should they keep amongst the two outfielders? They got to send one to the minors, part ways with one. Which one would you rather have?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I go with Tauchman. I would go with him.
I'll go with Jay Bruce. I like that proven bat there. And they have Gardy for defense as their backup outfielder. What about you, Doc?
I think the guy they get rid of, they can't keep. Tauchman, I think, is out of options. And so if they get rid of him, he's gone. And so I think that's where they're looking at trades. And the same thing with Jay Bruce. I think he has an opt-out that comes into account, like, I guess, today. And so the question is, who do you want in 2021? I think Jay Bruce will be the better player.
They have to make a decision.
But
Maybe
I think if you're looking at the team long term, Tauchman, the Yankees would have him under control for another 4 years, and so I think that's what the big debate is. And I think with that in mind, I want Jay Bruce on the Yankees. I'd carry one less pitcher and take them both. That's what I would do.
Okay, there you go. There's another option.
If I pick between one or the other, I'd take Tauchman.
Okay, you like that defense, and I like the bat a little more.
And I don't see Gardy being around next year, so I think if you're looking long term down the line,
Gardy will be around 3 years from now. Gardy's just sailing along. He has the Yankees have. He has a contract for next year. Something I'm not sure.
I think it's a mutual option. Yeah.
Right. I get the feeling Gardy's looking like a kid in spring training, and I think he's going to have a decent year, enough where they just like him as a backup outfielder. As long as he supplies really good defense and his hitting's not a liability, I think, I think Gardy's back next year too.
So let's look at a couple of the comments that we had. Carlos, who joins us every day, he was talking about the Cubs of the late 80s. Very, very good pick.
Very good one. Yeah.
And Keith chimes in. He says, Good morning to you too, Keith. Glad you're watching. Keith, of course, is from TGI Sports Talk, TGI Sports Talk, and a great host, great show, and he's also on Northeast Streaming Sports with us.
Guys, another team that got swept in the World Series, like the Indians, the 66 Dodgers. They were heavy favorites against the Baltimore Orioles, Kovacs, Drysdale, and got swept.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'll give you one more, and they're very similar because they both did win World Series again in the 80s, but those late 70s Phillies were great teams that kept losing in the World Series, and the late 70s Royals, who the Yankees kept beating. Those are also great teams.
Great point. Great point. I mean, you're talking, Chris Chambliss winning one of those games with a 3-run shot. I think it was in the bottom of the ninth that he hit that 3-run home run. He got mauled going around the bases.
And the 60 Yankees were clearly better than the Pittsburgh Pirates, yet found a way to lose.
You know what I noticed? Just sidetracking for a minute, but on the subject we're on, when the Yankees lost the World Series, they normally, from what I remember, lost like 4-3 with those great teams. And the 3 games they blew the other teams out. They had a good pitcher.
Pirates,
they were nothing or whatever it was. But when they had their weaker pitching in, is when the other teams beat them, and they had their better pitching in for the other team. So when they did lose, they lost 3. They were losing the four games, but 3 of those games they won. They absolutely slaughtered the other teams, if I remember correctly.
The Pirates in that series, yeah.
So, take care of a couple business things first, folks. We are on Mac and Jack Sports, as I said, that's what you're tuned into right now. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. We have a lot of guests all week. We cover a lot of things. Join us anytime you can. We're also on, if you can't get to the TV or you can't get to a screen, we are on some big sites. We're on Spotify, which is the biggest iHeartRadio, and iTunes, also on Pandora. So if you can't get to a screen, you can hear us and hear all Northeast Streaming Sports shows over there. We're also got our own YouTube channel. If you can get over there and subscribe to that, we'd appreciate that. It's growing. The Northeast Streaming Sports is growing by leaps and bounds, and we're glad to be giving you all these shows on a couple sites where if you just love sports, and it's different from the big networks, guys, in that it's a personal show where you can call some shows, you can make comments, you can ask questions. You really can't do that with the big network. So it's a personal show just for you. So if you got a chance, check out Northeast Streaming Sports, and I'm glad you joined us as you do all week. So back to the debate, Jack. We're going to go over the most intimidating team in sports history. This covers all sports. And this is a tough one because, man, there were a lot of intimidating teams in a lot of different sports. Of course, the Yankees being one in baseball, they're powerful teams, intimidate a lot of people. Hockey, you had a lot of intimidating teams, and football, of course, and in basketball. I mean, who wanted to play the Celtics in the late 60s? And, there's so many. But I went ahead and I picked the Steeler teams of the 70s, the Steel Curtain, and who wanted to go and play this team. I mean, they dominated on all sides of the ball, defensively especially. You can have your 85 Bears. You can have your 2000 Ravens. When you went up against that Steel Curtain, you were totally dominated on every level of the defense. You had, of course, Mean Joe Green, who was a character in himself, pretty nasty on the football field. He had Ernie Holmes and L.C. Greenwood with him, Dwight White. The linebacking crew led by the nasty, toothless middle linebacker Jack Lambert, who went to the ball and they flowed to the ball and they sacked the quarterback quite often. The defensive backfield you had was intimidating. They would punish the receivers coming over the middle when you had Mel Blount and Donnie Shell back there. Great, all Hall of Famers too. On the offensive side of the ball, Jack, their offensive line was tremendous. I mean, they took a defensive line and opened up huge holes for Franco Harris and Rocky Blyer. They gave Terry Bradshaw all kinds of time to throw those long bombs to probably the best duo in football history, Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. I mean, this team, nobody wanted to play. They played in the division at the time, the conference that dominated the NFC and Super Bowls. And, if you ask the Minnesota Vikings, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Rams, I mean, what team they went against that was probably the most dominating, the most intimidating team they played that year, it would have to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jack.
I agree with you to a degree, but when we talk about intimidation, we're not necessarily talking about greatness, okay? Not all great teams are intimidating. They're just so darn good. They beat you, on the field. Intimidation comes in different forms. And one of them is the opponents see you before the game, and they're partly beaten just by looking at you. Remember the movie 61 that Billy Crystal did? You see the Minnesota Twin players warming up, throwing the ball. As soon as Mickey Mantle steps in the batter's box for batting practice, they all stop and they quickly look. That's a form of intimidation in a certain way. Now, during the time those Steelers played, there was a team that was even more intimidating than them, and they're not my choice here. The Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders were intimidators. They have the reputation for being intimidators, and not in a good way. They were known for taking certain cheap shots, hitting a guy extra hard, and they weren't quite as good as the Steelers teams, even though they were comparable. They weren't quite as good. They lose to the Steelers, in the AFC Championship game to see who go to the Super Bowl. They beat tough games. But the Steelers, those Raider teams are known for intimidation. The team that I think is the most intimidating team of all time was the Broad Street Bullies, the Philadelphia Flyers of the 1970s. They were the ultimate in cheap shots and fighting. At that time, keep this in mind, fighting was not only tolerated in the NHL, it was encouraged. People would say, well, no one's going to watch the game if you eliminate fighting, which to me I could never understand because hockey's a beautiful game. Fighting should have been discouraged. But in the 1970s, it was encouraged. And did the Broad Street Bullies take it to another level? They were so intimidating that Madison Square Garden and their number one goon, Dave Schultz, is beating up one of the Ranger players, and his teammates on the Rangers were too scared to leave the bench to come to help their guy out. That's how intimidating they were. I mean, I was watching one Flyer Ranger game. Man, I couldn't believe it. I tuned into the game an hour late, and I want to see what I miss. And only 3 minutes went off the clock because there were fights, one after the other. They were intimidating in other ways. They brought in Kate Smith, the singer, the Flyers, to sing God Bless America before big games. And that would actually intimidate the opponents because that was known as the Flyers theme song. So once Kate Smith was brought in, it was considered to be all over. And, it was just they won games through intimidation. And let me tell you, and if you allow the fighting, and it shouldn't be allowed in any form of life unless it's a legitimate sport like boxing in the ring with rules and regulations, but they would break the rules, the Flyers, spend all the time in the penalty box, and the opponents would be scared of those guys. I mean, like I said, they would be half beaten before the first puck dropped.
Well, Jack, just to counter what you said about the Raiders, yes, they were an intimidating team. There's no doubt about it. They had the reputation for that. But when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers sure weren't intimidated by them. And when they played the Miami Dolphins weren't intimidated by them because they both beat them. What I'm saying about intimidation is a total domination of a team. And you know it when you're going in to play that game, that before you even get on there, I'm not talking about fights. I'm talking about the game itself. When you go in before that game, you know you're going to lose. You're intimidated even to go on that field and give it your best because you know in the end that Mean Joe Green is going to sack you. You know that Franco Harris is going to run for over 100 yards. And you know that Terry Bradshaw is going to throw the ball to Lynn Swann or to John Stallworth, and you're going to lose that game. So for as intimidating as the Raiders were, they sure weren't intimidated by. I mean, they weren't.
The Steelers were a great team. They weren't intimidated by the Raiders. But on balance around the league, the Raiders brought more fear into players because they would take cheap shots all the time. That it's sad. It shouldn't be tolerated, but that's the way it was.
Well,
I
let
could
me
name
tell
a
you
certain basketball team. I'm not going to name their name just in case Doc was going to mention them. You're going to mention the basketball team, Doc?
I was going to mention a basketball team.
Right, then I'm going to leave it alone for him to mention. But certain teams, there's a certain sense of intimidation, like not naming any particular player. You could have a backup player who's known for fouling someone when they're in the air, taking a layup and knocking them on their rear end. That's intimidation, even though the player might not be that good.
Okay, what do you got, Doc?
All right, so I think those Steelers teams were amazing. And not being a big at all hockey fan or knowing much about the history of hockey outside of saying Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky, and Bobby Orr, that's my extent of my hockey knowledge. So I can't comment on the Flyers. I was thinking about when we were thinking about intimidating those old Minnesota Viking teams with the Purple People Eaters. I think they were probably intimidating. Then when you started talking about the idea, Mac was just bringing this up, of teams that you knew you lost before anything ever even happened. And Jack was talking about Kate Smith and God Bless America. But when the Chicago Bulls of the late 80s started playing Sirius from the Alan Parsons Project and dun, 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 the lights going around in that arena, you knew you were going to lose that game. He was also talking about when Mickey Mantle took batting practice, those 1927 Yankees. The story is that when they took batting practice in the 27 World Series against the Pirates, the Pirates were watching Ruth and Gehrig and Bob Musial and Tony Lazzari hitting bombs all over the place, and the World Series was over. And I just wanted to tell a quick little story that's similar. You talk about when the other team comes off the bus and you automatically lose, right? I was coaching high school baseball in New Jersey, and we were playing a team from Demarest, New Jersey, Northern Highlands Regional Demarest. And I think our team was much better. We had a lot of talent. But those kids came off the bus, and they were wearing Major League style uniforms. And instead of it saying Demarest across the front, instead of it saying Dodgers across the front, it said Demarest. It was the Los Angeles Dodgers uniform. Those kids came off the bus, and my kids went, "Oh, God, look how good they are." And we lost the game. They were intimidated from the moment they saw the uniform. So that does happen. But if I had to pick one, I don't know about hockey, so I'll have to say that I'll go with those steel curtain teams.
Yeah, but when I say intimidation, the basketball team I was going to mention, for example, who should be in the discussion, the Bad Boys, the Detroit Pistons with Bill Laimbeer. They're a lot better players than Bill Laimbeer. But who was more intimidating than Bill Laimbeer? He got Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen hated his guts. Larry Bird hated his guts, okay? Because they said Laimbeer would try to actually injure them. Now, as much as we all hate something like that and despise it, the point is Laimbeer was able to get away with it at that time, and that was intimidation. But just back to the Flyers, a little bit of a story. When they were winning those 2 Stanley Cups in 74-75 season, the Russian national team was on tour playing the other NHL teams in the NHL All-Stars, and the Russians were dominating. Now they have to play an exhibition game against the Stanley Cup champion Philadelphia Flyers, and the Russians were used to gentlemanly hockey. Right off the bat, the Flyers are roughhousing them, and the Russians never saw anything like it, and they were so intimidated they lost 4-1. And then their newspapers are coming out with stories that we're sportsmen and all they want to do is fight. They're this, they're that, they're that. The Flyers intimidated them so bad they couldn't function that game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is different forms of intimidation. I mean, listen, I don't think Joe Frazier was intimidated by Muhammad Ali, but I think George Foreman might have been. I mean, because of his style and because of how he took it to Foreman in the press. But I mean, there's different forms of intimidation. As you said, Jack, you got some people that just go out there intentionally and do things that are either borderline or they're illegal, and they do them, and that may cause you to win. And there's intimidation just as you're going up against a great team like the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, where some of these teams, they knew before they even stepped on the court that the game was over. So, I mean, there is different forms of intimidation.
Well, what city, just quickly, what city's been known to boo their players more than any other?
Well, I'll tell you, yes.
Philadelphia. The Flyers even intimidated their own fans. They never booed those Flyer teams. That's how intimidating they were.
Good point. Good point. So, guys, we're going to go ahead and take our last time out real quick here. We're in about an hour and a half of our show. We'll be right back. This will be a quick break. We'll be back soon, and we still got some more debating to do. And the next one up, right after this break, should instant replay stay as it is, maybe get bigger, or should it just say, the heck with it? Let's go back to the old times. Should it stay or should it go, folks? So that will be our next debate right after these messages.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you
Yes,
can't.
I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Just to let you all know, I am the deeper voice on that song. We recorded that just recently, and the deeper singer is me. Jack is the higher singer in the background there, as he is saying he's better than I am. Now, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer, and our special guest, Dr. Paul Simendinger, who's here with us every Saturday. And we're going to get back to our debate. And This is very interesting to me because, of course, we're all old school here. I would imagine in one way or another. Instant replay has been a part of sports now for quite a while, and it's supposed to be used to make things better. And Jack, I want to hear what you got to say about instant replay. Should it stay or should it go?
I think it should stay, but it's got to be modified. I don't want to see it out of control where we instant replaying every play. The concept of instant replay was not intended to make the game longer. I mean, they were talking, let's say, in the sport of baseball and making the game shorter. And the umpires are conferring for a few minutes on an instant replay call. We don't want to see that. But we also want to see the right calls made. I mean, just think of how well instant replay could have been used in the 1985 World Series when umpire Don Deckinger missed the call in the 9th inning. That may have resulted in the Cardinals beating the Royals in the World Series instead of them losing the game and then going on to lose Game 7 and losing that series. And what about Armando Galarraga? I think, his perfect game. Did Jim Joyce miss the call? Jim Joyce would have loved instant replay then. They would have taken a look at it. They would have determined the runner was out at first base, and we would have had the perfect game. But I want instant replay with strategy, okay? Now, for old school guys, you're going to hate this, Mac. Doc might not like it. Take the sport of baseball. Let an umpire use instant replay. A manager. Use instant replay as much as he wants under this condition. If you're right, great, more power to you. We'll change the call in your favor. But if you're wrong, it's an out. You add an out to him, okay? If he's wrong, and that makes it a decision, because if you feel you're firmly right and you see the replay in your own dugout that indicates you're right, you shouldn't be scared of doing it. Football, the same thing. There's got to be penalties. And harsh penalties if you're calling instant replay. That's just my feeling. I want to see it, but make it a little more strategy. And I got to admit, I miss those entertaining arguments like Billy Martin with the umpire, the manager going nose to nose. The fans like that. And, as much as we abuse the umpires, maybe that's the wrong way to abuse them, but as fans, let's say, booing them, so on, come on, this and that, we kind of miss doing it. We don't have it anymore, and now they're talking about balls and strikes, replays on that. I think that's going a little too far, but I want instant replay to stay, but I want it modified, and I want it to be used partly as strategy, like with Joe Girardi. A few seasons back in the playoffs, he elected not to use instant replay. Okay? Let it be part of the strategy.
Well, Jack, I'm all for getting games right. But as you said, well, let's do this and let's do that. Let's make a rule for this and a rule for that. All we're doing is we're making it more complicated. We're making it more so that there's going to be even more timeouts, even more longer things to happen. If you make a wrong call, well, then you got an out. Well, how doesn't that change the game, right? So if you're going to have replay, as you suggest, and keep it, why are you going to penalize somebody for using it? If I'm a manager and I see something and I think it's right and there's not enough evidence of this, why do I get an out? I'm using a tool that you're giving me, so you're going to penalize me for using that tool because I was wrong, saying that the batter was out or safe, or whether the catch was made or the catch wasn't made, or the goal is in or the goal wasn't in. So you're going to give me a tool and then you're going to penalize me for using it. This is what happens when you take something that was great before. And what I mean by great is it was part of the game, right? If the referee made a wrong call, that was part of the history of the game. And either people celebrated the bad call or people complained about the bad call. And even though it may have affected whether you won the game or not, it still was a human element that was part of the game, and we accepted that, Jack. I mean, Drew Pearson on that Hail Mary catch clearly knocked Paul Krause on his butt and made the catch. That was offensive interference. The Viking fans know it. The Dallas Cowboy fans know it, but that's what happened. So why would you want to take something that has been historically something talked about during baseball or football or basketball or hockey or tennis or whatever you want to, whatever sport you're in, and you want to try to be right all the time? Well, I got news for you, Jack. They're not right all the time in instant replay. There's not enough evidence. Well, we don't know. It's too close to call. And then if they get it wrong, what happens to the umpires, the referees, or whatever, because they get it wrong? Do they get penalized too? Should they be fined? Should they be suspended? I mean, this has created such a distraction to the game. You've taken momentum away from a team that's driving down the field. You've taken momentum away from a team that's hitting the ball and getting people on bases, getting to a pitcher. You've taken all that out of the game with this instant replay stuff. I think it's long enough we tried it. I think the experiment has failed, and let's just get back to playing the game. Let's get back to the bad calls and all. Let's just play the game, and that's part of the game. It was that way for decades, Jack. We enjoyed it, and I don't see why we can't do that again. Let's stop making the games longer and more complicated. Okay, Doc, what do you think?
All right, so I don't necessarily disagree with you. I disagree with Jack on the idea of adding more gimmicks to the game. So if you just give me a second here, I think instant replay's here and it's not going to go away. I think if they got rid of it and we saw an egregious call that like the perfect game or the World Series or whatever, and we know that the guy was out or safe and they called him the wrong way, that would just be outrageous because we know it and they have the technology to overturn it. I think the purpose of instant replay was designed to get the play correct. And then what I think happened, it became a gimmick. You can only challenge once or twice. And Joe Girardi didn't challenge that game because of the fact that he didn't want to use his challenge up too early or whatever. I believe there was a football playoff game last year, the year before, with the Saints, and there was an obvious pass interference, but that wasn't reviewable because it was within this parameter of that, and everybody knows the call was wrong, but because they made it into a gimmick, they couldn't review the play. And I don't remember all the specifics, but I remember the discussion about it. So my feeling is, if you have instant replay, it shouldn't be a gimmick. It should be used to get the calls right in real time. And when it comes to getting the calls right within the spirit of the game, not looking at the minutia of 1 millionth time speed and seeing that the guy's I don't know, the nail on his finger went off the base for half of a billionth of a second, and so then he was tagged out, and so the guy was out. Or he's sliding over the base and his arm is just above the base, and so when the tag came on him, well, he technically wasn't on the base, even though he was hovering above it or anything like that. When they get to that type of minutia, it takes away from the spirit of the sport. In baseball, what I've advocated for is a fifth umpire. And that fifth umpire sits up in a booth at that game with all of the monitors and reviews any close play, whether it was a catch, a fair ball, a foul ball, was the guy out or safe, or whatever. But not in infinitesimal time like 1 millionth. Maybe you go to half speed. And the home plate umpire has a radio in his ear. This guy has it up in the booth. You're not asking, the managers don't get any replay questions. This guy or a person reviews each play, and if it's close, they just wire down to the home plate umpire. They say, put your hand up. Don't let the guy pitch. I'm still checking. Yeah, the call was right. Game on. And then there's no time lost, and the game just keeps moving, and there's at least the sense that everybody did their best to get the call right. And that's what I think.
Well, but that is a form of instant replay, and also, how many times have we seen replay now? They're looking at every possible angle. They drive me crazy. And even though we're watching on TV, At first, we think he's out. Then we think he's safe. Then we think he's this, depending on the angle. And finally, they keep searching for the right angle, that it's going to finally, reveal what the decision should be. And
I think 99% of the time, the umpires are, well, maybe not 99, but pretty close. The umpires are correct. So it's more my thought is it's just sort of affirming that the umpire was correct or not. And they're checking the close plays, and I think they could do it in real time. You see it in tennis. Like, it's instantaneous. Oh, it was out. Yeah. Okay. Well, then it goes this way. Overturn it.
Well, Doc, to take issue with what you're saying here, okay? Then what we're going to start doing is changing the game. And what I mean is, how many double plays have been turned when the second baseman doesn't even touch the bag? So are we going to start saying he's safe now? Is that what we're going to do?
No, I'm not saying that.
Well, you have to, because you want to make the play right. So you're saying that the guy that turned the double play actually touched the bag and threw it to first when he didn't. Well, if you have instant replay, well, he didn't touch the bag, so we got to overturn that call.
But we have that now, don't we?
If you want to get it corrected. I mean, double plays, the guy doesn't touch the bag, Doc, half the time, and it's called a double play. They're not even contesting it. But once you get this out, then they're going to start contesting that. So now on a fall ball that hits the line, goes over the bag at a certain angle, is fair or foul. Are we going to review every one of those plays now? Every one of them. You're going to slow the game down no matter what you do, because what you're asking is that the instant replay becomes the umpire. That's what you're going to be. That's what you're going to be saying. It's going to be calling balls and strikes now. I mean, why have an umpire at all? I mean, are we going to review every pitch? I mean, if you want to get everything right, and this is what I'm saying about whether it should stay or go. I mean, what I'm saying is in the future, we're going to be evaluating everything. And the reason why they have penalties for making too many calls is because it slows the game down. Well, I say if that's what you're going to do, then get rid of it. Don't even use it, because you're making it too much of a this isn't a video game. This is people that are playing, as you say, at real time, that you can slow down to make it so that it's right or wrong. And even then, Doc, they don't have the angles all the time, and they say there's not enough evidence to overturn the call. You can't stop that. You can't stop that. And if we're going to review every play made by the catcher, every double play, every steal, every ball thrown over to the first baseman to see whether he got him or not, how does that not slow down the game?
I don't think those. So I don't disagree in general with what you're saying, but I don't think there's that many close plays in the course of a game. And I think you just say, like, maybe that umpire has a limited amount of time. I think it would happen quicker than you think, because I think we're seeing on TV, and we know almost instantaneously most of the time whether the guy was out or safe or whatever.
No, there have been so many times the umpire makes a call, and I think the umpire's got it wrong initially. And I can't wait to see the replay. And a lot of the times I'm proven to be correct. Obviously, he's on a different angle standing there. I'm watching on TV, so I might have a lot better angle. I think Mac Doc's right. Instant replay's here to stay. And if we take it away, the first time we have a very controversial call like the one I mentioned in the World Series with Don Deckinger, there'll be an outcry, bring back instant replay. I don't think we can go away from it completely now. Maybe we can modify. Look, the New York Mets have had one no-hitter in team history, and in reality, that wasn't a no-hitter. Johan Santana, one of the balls hit the foul line. So if we had instant replay, he wouldn't have gotten a no-hitter. Is that a good thing? Is that not a good thing?
Does it really matter? I mean, see, this is what I'm saying. Does it really? It matters for the stats, but does it matter whether you win the ball game or not, Jack? I mean, does that really? And when you get down to it, does that really make a difference if the team wins or loses with that base hit that hit the ball, that hit the line? Does that matter?
No, Mac, no. The Joe Joyce call that he missed. You want to know something? That turned out to be better than a perfect game because it elevated the pitcher as a human being and Joe Joyce and gave us a baseball story for the ages. Exactly. So it's actually indirectly the pitcher benefited in a way. You know, I'm not sure that Jim Joyce benefit directly because he was a great umpire and people remember that, but he was elevated as a human being to people. So,
that was my point, Jack, that these calls are part of history, whether you're on the wrong side or not. And I'm going to give you something to think about. We have the technology not just to have an instant replay. We could put microchips in the bags, in the baseball bags, the plate, home plate. We can put sensors in the glove. We can exactly see or know when the ball hits the glove, not when it's going in the web, when it hits the glove and the batter and the runner's foot touches the base. We got that technology. So why not use it? Or is that just too much? This is what I'm worried about, guys, is that's where this is going. We're going to not have umpires behind home plate anymore. We're just going to have the video there. Go ahead.
Mac, you mean to tell me the 1996 Yankee playoff game where the Oriole outfielder, Tarasco, the kid, Jeffrey Meyer reached out. Clearly, the ball would have been caught, put it that way. The Yankees benefited with the home run. You mean in a case like that, we shouldn't go to instant replay? Because that was a real injustice. And that was fan interference. Clearly,
well,
if a fan interferes, shouldn't we have a replay to conclude the fan interfered?
We never did before, Jack, and we're still alive and we're still playing baseball.
Don't say that to the Orioles. Their 96 season, they didn't advance.
Exactly.
The Yankees won the World Series. If you're an Oriole fan, you don't just say, "Oh, we move on."
Well, we used to, Jack, and that became part of the story of the game. All I'm saying is, if we keep going down this road, you're not going to see the human element anymore. What you're going to see is censored videos, and I don't know if that's good for the game or not. It would speed up the game, but I don't know if it's good for the game.
I admit the human element's powerful, and that's a very good argument.
So guys, our last topic for today is the most underrated position in football. Jack, I think you're up first with this one.
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to say quarterback. I'm not going to say wide receiver, defensive end who sacks the quarterback. Those are the glamour guys. I mean, we just have to look, just for fun, look at the NFL draft, the projections by all the experts. Check out all the experts. And there's one thing you won't see. You won't see a field goal kicker on there. No one ever drafts a field goal kicker high. The last time it happened was many years ago. The Oakland Raiders, Steve Jankowski, or someone, I hope I got his name right, was drafted number 1 by the Raiders, about 20 years ago? Field goal kickers never go in the first round. It just doesn't happen. And those guys have such a position of responsibility. When the game's on the line at the end, it comes down to the field goal kicker, okay? Either he's the hero or he's the GOAT, yet we don't take him. The teams don't take their field goal kickers as seriously in personnel and evaluating who they draft, who they trade for. It's like when the kicker misses a couple of kicks, they bring someone in. They bring in a lot of guys. It's like an audition. Every year they seem to be auditioning. Unless a team gets lucky enough to get an established kicker, he's making big kicks, they keep him. But the kicker's also off to the side, and also their fellow teammates, for the most part in football, don't respect the kicker because he's not getting tackled, he's not getting dirtied, he's not going through what they go through. But when the game is on the line, at the end of the game, it's the kicker who often decides whether the team wins or loses. And he has more pressure on him than anyone else. Any other position, just about, can afford to have a bad play now and then. A running back can stumble and not gain yardage. A receiver can drop a ball. A quarterback can overthrow a receiver. But a kicker can't miss. It's cut and dry. He absolutely has to make every kick. He just can't afford to miss a kick. So I think that's the most underrated position in the sense that teams should be looking to draft the best kickers, get the best kickers available, but they kind of a little bit more nonchalant when it comes to field goal kickers. I feel that they should be considering their importance to the team.
Right, and that's exactly why I don't think they're underrated, Jack, because they are very important to the team, right? I mean, if you look at some of the field goal kickers in history, Jan Stenerud, if you look at, Mark Mosley was MVP of the league, Jack. I mean, that's not underrated. That's rated right up there. So I don't think they're underrated, maybe unappreciated. Might be a better word for it when they do miss some field goals and they bring somebody else in. I think that they're rated just right because, as you said, the Chicago Bears kicker, I think he missed like 3 field goals where they could have won the playoffs, kept bonking off, and he was gone the next year. So maybe they're unappreciated, but not underrated. If you want to look for underrated, the only place you can go is the offensive line, Jack. I mean, we follow the ball as fans. People who coach and maybe played football look at it a little differently. But people that watch the game follow the football. The ball is kicked off to the returner. We watch the returner. We really don't watch the blocking. We don't see that the side opened up because of a block. When the guy tackles the guy in a return, we don't see the blocks he had to fight through to get to that returner. Then, of course, the quarterback gets the ball. We kind of look at the center real quick because he snaps it. But the quarterback gets the ball, our eyes go right to the quarterback. The running back gets the ball. He runs through this hole that had to be all kinds of schemes had to happen for that running back to break through that hole. Sometimes they do it on their own, but very rarely. We don't see the zone blocking. We don't see the pulling guards as much. We don't look at the cross block. We don't look at any of that stuff or the double teams. We say, hey, look, that was one heck of a run. My God, that guy is great. The quarterback passing the ball, we say Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. But we don't talk about the offensive lines that protected him so he could throw that ball. We look at the wide receiver. As soon as the quarterback throws the ball, has time, the guy comes open, the guy makes the catch. Wow, what a great receiver. That man is one of the best players in the league. But that tackle who held off that great defensive end, he did his job. That's what he's supposed to do. We look at defense, as you said, Jack, the defensive ends and the linebackers who tackle the people, right? They sack the quarterback. And guess what? That's the offensive lineman's fault. Never mind that the quarterback rolled out and he got tackled. Never mind that he held the ball too long. Never mind that the receiver didn't do his job and get open. It's the offensive lineman's fault that the quarterback got sacked, right? He got beat. And then you look at, maybe the drive killer that kills all drives. How many times does the offensive line get called for holding, right? You're driving down the field. You got 1st and 10. You're on the 40-yard line holding, what's his name? That's the only time they get looked at, Jack. So, as I said, if you really talk to the coaches, you talk to the players that play the game, the great running backs like Jimmy Brown, who had, he broke tackles. But, man, sometimes he ran and he didn't get touched. If you talk to these guys, they'll tell you what's the most important thing is that offensive line in front of them. If you talk to the quarterbacks and they take these guys out for dinner and they buy them things and they say, you played really good today. He said, well, I had plenty of time to throw the ball. Receivers are a different story. I didn't want to get into receivers. But football, definitely the most underrated position is the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm just going to say when a team is making their moves to become stronger for the following season, they address the offensive line issues. They don't seem to address field goal kickers as quickly. They feel, well, we're going to bring in a few guys and let them battle it out, and then we'll get the best guy. It just doesn't seem they address it as quickly as they would the offensive line. But what do you say, Doc?
All right. I think we do talk about offensive lines when they do great and when they don't do great. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about whether Sam Darnold is a good quarterback or not. And part of the reason that we don't know is because the Jets haven't had a good offensive line. As you know, my favorite football player of all time is John Riggins. No one ever tells the story of John Riggins without talking about the Hogs and all those plays and the way that they would open up the holes for him. And yes, kickers are Mosley that year did win the MVP. And The place kickers are often on the highlight films because they're the ones who eventually kick the ball through the uprights or not. Scott Norwood in the Super Bowl, or Lawrence Tynes after he missed all those field goals in that playoff game, and then he finally made one. But you know who's never on the highlight films, and I don't think are ever really highly drafted either, is the punter. The punter is often forgotten about totally, and that person can really truly make or break a team in a game. So I'll go with the punter, but I'm not really married to the answer.
Well, I'll tell you who I think really won the debate. Neither of us here. I think Mac, our producer, came up with the right answer. Do you want to say?
I think
she got the right answer. The more you think of it,
she said the field goal kick holder.
Because if he doesn't place the ball the right way, so many kicks have been missed, and it all falls down on the kicker where we blame him. Well, some of the time it's the holder, and the good holder makes all the difference. You know, when the Jets won the Super Bowl, the only Super Bowl 1 year ago, their field goal kicker, Jim Turner, had a great season. His holder was Babe Pirelli, a veteran quarterback who'd been around for ages. They got rid of Babe Pirelli the next year. They had a new holder, and Jim Turner wasn't nearly as effective. And he'd say, like, he's having problems, you know, with the holder, how the holder puts down the laces of the ball, you know, and so on.
Well, you know, to piggyback what Doc said and the producer, a lot of times the kick holder is the punter, right? He holds the ball a lot for the kicker. But, Doc, I mean, I can agree with you to a point. But I don't think they're underrated in the punters. And the reason why I'm saying that, first of all, the game, you really don't punt that much anymore, for sure. Ray Guy was drafted first by the Oakland Raiders because of his punting ability. And they still touch the ball. They're looked at. I mean, if he shanks a punt, as you're saying, you know, that may turn the whole game around. But is he underrated or underappreciated? Maybe underappreciated. And the only reason why I say the offensive line is because of the fans. We follow the ball. The offensive lineman never touches the ball unless he does something wrong and has to catch the ball because it's batted in the air. But I can see where the kicker, as Jack said, doesn't get the accolades he should when he does good, because if he messes up, he's gone. Definitely the punter, because he can change the field position in a minute with a good punt or bad punt. And so, I mean, they're all good answers, but maybe the producer did get it right, saying that it was the kick holder. Maybe even a long distance snapper. I mean, you know, that's another position that maybe you should consider, right?
Long snapper, yeah.
Yes, definitely. So, folks, we normally do a segment at the end of the show. We're coming to it very quickly here, and I do something better with Jack. And the segment is Who's Better? And I'll ask about anything, sports. I'll ask about music. I'll ask about actors. It really doesn't matter. I just want Jack's opinion on who he thinks is better. So, Jack, since you mentioned kickers, right? Who was better as a kicker? Was it Jan Stenerud or Mark Mosley?
I love Jan Stenerud with the soccer-style kick. I know Mark Mosley had the MVP season. I just love Jan Stenerud with those Kansas City Chief teams. He actually missed one very big field goal, which resulted in them losing a playoff game to the Miami Dolphins that helped propel the Dolphins into their first Super Bowl. But I love Jan Stenerud with the soccer-style kick.
How about you, Doc?
I think Stenerud had the lengthier career, and so he was the better of the two.
We just had a Wall of Fame inductee, Doc. His name's Don Hudson, played with the Green Bay Packers. This guy was incredible, and people don't talk about. Well, they did before the Super Bowl. He was considered one of the greatest players in football. So, Jack, who's better, Don Hudson or Jerry Rice?
Oh, Jerry Rice. I mean, you have to, I know Jerry Rice came later. Don Hudson, you could say, was a Jerry Rice of his day. Jerry Rice's longevity in itself gives him the edge. I thought, you know, great question with spring training. Normally, Russell Wilson always came to Yankee camp. Who is a better baseball player, Russell Wilson or Tim Tebow? That would have been a good question. Who's better?
You could throw Michael Jordan in there too, Jack. I mean, you know what I mean? So, folks, we're out of time. got a few seconds left. I want to thank Dr. Paul Semendinger from the Yankees blog. Start spreading the news. Check it out when you get a chance. It's very informative, very well done. He does a great job. And as I said in the beginning of the show, he's also an award-winning author. He got a couple of awards, at least a couple, for start spreading the news. Scattering the Ashes is the name of the book, and he does a great job with that. Tune in tomorrow with us when we have our This Week in Sports show. We'll be covering all the big stories in sport. I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow, Jack. So,
next time we see Doc, the baseball season would have gotten underway, and just are they winning the World Series this year, the Yankees? And
Yes. Yeah. This is our year.
This is our year. Sound like the Dallas Cowboys now.
As it each year, I'm sure.
Have a great Saturday, folks, and we'll see you tomorrow.